candidates act respectfully of each other. Candidates will be as part of being respectful to stay within the time limits of the debate. GM will provide a 5-second warning when your time is almost done. After 1 minute, we ask that you cede the floor to the next candidate out of respect for their time as well. We ask the audience to act respectfully as well. So please do not interrupt. These are rules also given to me. So after a first interruption, I will warn you. After a second interruption, I will ask you to leave. I will point out, I've never thrown anyone out of my class, so it'll be a first to throw someone out of here. Some of my colleagues have thrown people out of class, but I hope that doesn't happen tonight. All right, so we'll start with candidates introducing themselves. This order was randomly generated by, I had my kids draw names out of a hat. It was a fun activity this afternoon. So we'll start with Bridgeen. And so.
Hello everyone, my name is Bridgeen Lynch. I'm a sophomore with Envision, Iowa, the presidential candidate. I'm involved in my sorority Zeta Alpha, some of you may know that. The big thing I want to talk about in this debate is really what Envision Iowa stands for, and that really is representation here. Student government really isn't that known on campus to very many students. Some didn't know how to get involved ever until this upcoming election, and that's how Envision I decided to put their team together, was to base it off of students who have always wanted to get involved but never known really how. And so one of our goals is to basically change the face of student government, to make it more inclusive and opening and welcoming to new opinions, new outlooks on everything, based on everyone's background on our ticket. We do come from all different places, and so that's really important to us that every background is represented, every background is cared for, and has a voice on campus. With that being said, I'm really excited to get this debate started, to hear what everyone has to say, and for all of you to hear what Envision Iowa has to offer.
Hi,
So we have random order, so sorry, we'll go to Hira next. Thank you. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Hira Mustafa. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm running for your student body president. Throughout my time here at the university, I have been immersed in a variety of different cultures and communities on campus. I have overseen the Speak Out survey for sexual misconduct. I've run the largest tradition at Iowa, the Homecoming Parade, and have supported and guided hundreds of students in my role as a resident assistant. Through these experiences and the 10+ other organizations and committees that I've sat on, I have gained a thorough understanding of what the student experience is at Iowa. I know your challenges, the individualized barriers that we face, and have organized efforts across a variety of issues to make this campus the best home it can be for all of us. I want to ensure that every student at the university is aware of the resources available to them to support them through their unique adversities. Heath and I have built an extraordinary team of 30 students who care as deeply about your individualized stories as we do. I look forward to the conversation we have tonight and hearing about the different students' issues that we all face.
Thank you. Dady? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Wrong sheet. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin Nelson, and I am both honored and humbled to be running with our incredible team in Power Iowa. I am running for student body president because I understand the importance of experienced leadership when we're discussing these long-term issues such as tuition affordability and campus safety. I have listened to students, and together we have collaborated on all sorts of policies that have made this campus a better place. In the fall of 2016, a woman posted a Facebook status describing an intruder breaking into her home. As the city liaison for UISG, we developed policies and pushed them through city council that not only secured her home, but secured the home of every off-campus student here in Iowa. Hearing stories and coming up with solutions is one of the reasons why I wanted to become student body president, and is one of the foundations on which Nate and I have built our team. From working with university officials to advocating for other students, we are here to empower you.
Thank you. And finally, Dady.
Hi, my name is Dady Mansaray, and I'm running to be your next student body president. I was inspired to run for this position due to the lack of accessibility and student involvement in the decision-making process in UISG. For example, currently the current executive board do not have official office hours. That to me is a huge problem. We work for the students, not the other way around. To fix this problem, I intend to require all members of UISG to have official office hours so that students know who their representatives are and they can come to them and talk to them about issues and their concerns. I do not have the same experience as all members here on this panel, but you will know that by meeting me. You find out by meeting me that I am a dedicated individual that will do everything in my power to make sure your voices are heard on this campus.
Thank you. So our first question was one that you can lead to let everyone know what you want to pursue as UISG president. So describe your top initiative that you would pursue if you were elected as UISG president. So we'll go over one topic about the board.
Here at Empower Iowa, we capitalize on our experiences that we've been in student government, and as such, we will advocate to make sure that the university experience is as affordable for you as possible. And this includes up to 10 different initiatives that we have on our platform that you can find online. Affordability is a lot more than just tuition. It's a lot more than state appropriations. It's everything from housing, it's textbooks, it's food costs, and it's food accessibility. As such, we'll make sure that we're advocating for more housing supply in the Iowa City community. 4,000 units online came online last year alone, and that's as a result of advocacy UISG has done. We'll also make sure that textbooks are able to be checked out from libraries so that you're not spending an arm and a leg, $500 on one textbook that you open maybe once, and your TV rests on it the rest of the night. Ultimately, that's the important thing that we are seeking to address, is that affordability is not one issue, but it's multifaceted and is contingent on your existence here at the University of Iowa.
In addition to tuition affordability, one of our key focuses with Search Party is accessibility to the organization. I agree that this organization has been seen as elitist in the past and is hard to access for many groups on campus. And because of that, I want to ask how many students, please raise your hand if you had the student body president attend one of your student organization events this year. So those numbers speak for themselves. I think that someone who's in a leadership position for an organization should be embedded in the community. That's why our executive candidates, both Keith and I, and then our 30 ticketed senators, have committed to public office hours to make sure that we're attending your events, that we're next to you when you're experiencing the things that we're advocating for. We also want to open up the organization to 40 to 50 seats for first-year students. That includes transfer students in their first semester to be included in the organization. There were 76 plus applications for UISG seats for first years, and we want to make sure that those voices are still being included in some way.
One of the things that the Student Collective Party would like to advocate for is to have energy sufficient, advocate for energy conservation here on campus. Saving the university money will lead to lower tuition. We believe that because tuition covers school consumption costs, we would like to implement an initiative that will basically improve we would like to advocate for a system here on campus that will basically improve the systems here. I apologize. We would like to advocate for a system here on campus to improve the energy efficiency on campus here. Currently, in the library, the computers are kept on 24/7, and we would like to create a software that will improve those systems.
Thank you.
One of the things that I'm extremely passionate about, I know everybody at Envision Iowa is also extremely passionate about, is one of our initiatives to freeze your tuition. When you accept your acceptance letter to the University of Iowa, you accept that on the basis of this is the amount you're going to be paying every year, and it hasn't been that way every year, it's been increasing. So we want to try and work with the university and with everybody involved to make sure that your tuition is frozen, so that one payment that you're making, you make the entire 4 years. As a student who pays for my own tuition, I understand how much of a struggle that is to try and rile up the extra couple $1,000s that you need to pay for your tuition, and that's very difficult. So we're definitely work with everybody to implement that, and that's one of our favorite things. Also, along with that, we want to be as transparent as possible. We want you to know where your money is going. You have a $72 student activities fee. We want you to know where that's going, where it's being implemented, and we we want you to be able to have a say in where it's implemented. We're going to be conducting many surveys so that you can tell us what you want seen done on campus.
Thank you. Does Benjamin Rebuttal? Hira? Dady? Bridgeen? Okay, let's move on to our next question then. What experiences uniquely qualify you for this position? So we will start with Hira this time.
Well, I've been involved with several different organizations on campus. I think the number one experience I've had that will make me successful in this role is my experience as an RA. So in student government, you make a lot of advocate for various different policies and procedures. However, it's very difficult to make sure that those things are being effective or implemented when you aren't on the baseline to see residents and first-year students be impacted by those. And so it's very different to advocate for a food pantry when you've seen your residents skip out on meals or avoid attending events because maybe they don't have adequate clothing to wear, so you're advocating maybe for the clothing pantry. But it really grounds all of your work and it reminds you why you're doing the things that you're doing, and especially it helps you focus not on the things that you want to accomplish, but the things that you want to make sure are being the most effective for students and creating that change. So that's what I would like to focus on.
Thank you.
Experience, right? Currently, I'm the Hira Association president, and through this organization, I'm able to learn how to create a positive environment in student lives while working in a group that trying to achieve a common goal. Previously, I've had the pleasure to work in the community by volunteer at a local animal shelter. I enjoy outreaching to the community, in the community, and by following, and through my fellow students in order to inspire others. I believe that this experience has allowed me to grow as an individual and as a leader, and I am honored to be in this position to run as your next Body President.
So like I hit on before, our members of student government, or our members of our ticket don't have that much experience in student government, but as some of you may know, I did run as an independent senator last year. Unfortunately, I did not get the position, but it was an amazing learning experience for me, and I feel like I've grown so much as a person by doing that, and so I'm taking all the things that I learned from that and implementing it here so I can make sure I do it better this time around. I've also held many positions within my sorority, and within those, I was the homecoming Greek chairman. And for years in the past, there have been ideas that they wanted implemented that never really got around to it. And so I finally took the lead on those and said, we're doing this, this is what's happening, we're going to change the way we've done it in the past. And it actually worked out in our favor this year. We were very successful. Another thing is I am a first-generation student, and I know how hard it is to have a voice, being from such a small town that I am, and sometimes your voice gets lost in translation. You feel like you're just kind of lost in the crowd, and so I really want to advocate for those students as well. I've also volunteered at many state legislators. I've done many networking opportunities, and so I hope to bring some of them to campus as well.
I think when we're considering who is in charge of the University of Iowa student government, it's important to take into account experience. Because what experience teaches you is where the organization has been and what mistakes it's made and where it can go moving forward. I love working in the University of Iowa student government, but if you love something, you recognize that it has flaws. And so we are going to be learning from the past mistakes of previous administrations and making sure that moving forward, the University of Iowa student government is working as efficiently as possible. I'm also a big fan of practicing self-love, but I recognize I have my own flaws as well. And that is why throughout my time, I've been made sure that people who can make up for my weaknesses are always brought to the table. That the people whose perspectives that I don't necessarily know, I can recognize that they aren't at the table and bring them to it. I can use my own privilege to bring them to the table so they can advocate for themselves. Because ultimately, you are your best advocate. And that's the point of student government, is to help you advocate for yourself.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Hira?
No.
Dady? Bridgeen?
Can I have one?
Sure. Yeah. You get 30 seconds.
Thank you. Again, I do understand 100% where both Ben and Hira are coming from when they say we do have a lot of experience on student government, and I think that is amazing, and I respect them 100% for all the work that they have done. Given that, I do think that allowing those voices that haven't been heard on student government, those voices that haven't had a say in anything quite yet, that they finally get to step up in office and have to be able to impact the campus in the way they would want it rather than what the current student governments before have also wanted.
No, I agree. I brought in experienced student leaders who have proved themselves elsewhere, and we've brought them into our ticket, including Monica Aparicio Ruiz, wherever she may be, 2-year president of ALMA. She can advocate for the Latinx community and all students if you elect her, and you should, on Wednesday, March 28th.
All right, thank you. All right, our next question. Sure. Presidents only serve 1-year terms. How do you plan to ensure the long-term sustainability of your initiatives after your short term is over?
One of the things I would like to do is to implement more energy conservation on campus. One of the things we would like to continue doing here is to implement more energy conservation here on campus. We Student Collective Party and I understand that the university wastes a lot of money in many places. So we would like for instance, I mentioned earlier, create a system that will turn off all public computers that are being used, all public computers that are not being used after like 60 minutes of the activity. So basically, we would like to save the university money. In turn, we'll save student money following tuition.
Okay, thank you.
In order to make sure our initiatives stay intact long after we're gone, if elected, we want to be able to publicize them more and more to make sure students aren't forgetting about them, students aren't forgetting about the work we put in, the things we've passed. Also by getting the students more involved in hearing what they want, they'll be seeing the improvement, they'll be experiencing the improvement more so, and obviously if something's improving, you're going to want to keep it. If it's not broke, don't fix it, that kind of aspect. So we definitely want to implement that a lot. Also, one of our sustainability ideas that we want to see on campus that I think would last forever is a bike rental system where by a swipe of your UI card, you can rent a bicycle for 2 hours, maybe less, maybe more, and that way to keep the campus safer and cleaner. I know a lot of people can't really have bikes at their dorms or at their apartments, and so this is a good way to do that, and I think that would last really long.
I think this question kind of hits at the crux of what I was getting at in the last point. Like, this is why experience in UISG is so important, because it's true. All too often, initiatives are dropped after just a 1-year term when experienced leadership isn't elected back into office. It's important that institutional knowledge is maintained, because otherwise the wheel will attempt to be reinvented multiple times, and then we're kind of left just where we were before. And again, that is why it's so important that experience maintained while bringing in fresh ideas.
UISG's focus on initiatives should make sure that we have a point on all of our programs or events to institutionalize those efforts. So finding them a home in the university that is outside of UISG, whether that's partnering with different cultural organizations or programs like RVAP. If we can find a home for the different things that we're trying to change on campus, then those can be sustained even if our leaders leave the organization. Beyond that, focusing on policy change is another way to ensure that the change that you are advocating for is sustainable. For example, I changed an attendance policy last month to make sure that it was inclusive of mental health. And so that's something that, despite where I'll be in the organization next year, will continue to impact generations of students behind me.
Thank you. Doc, you have any rebuttal? You have to. Would you like to rebut?
Yes, my one question is how do both of y'all plan to encourage more outside students who don't believe that their voice matters, to encourage them to be more involved in the decision-making process? How do both of y'all?
Sure. We'll actually go down the aisle to keep this one. Bridgeen, do you want to add a rebuttal? Or you don't have to if you'd like to.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
In order to keep the student voices accurately heard, as you asked, like I said earlier, we want to implement more surveys on campus. And I know sometimes when you see a survey on your email, you're going to kind of brush it aside, but we want to keep hammering those out there and making sure each student fills them out, because we do want to do what's best for you guys. We don't want to do something that we assume you want, and maybe it's not what each and every student wants. We want to come to that conclusion of what each and every student wants to see done on campus, and what they want to participate in, what policy changes they want to see.
Andrew, would you like rebuttal? Yes, sure.
In my time at UISG, I've served on a number of ad hoc committees, including the food accessibility and affordability task force, and the housing accessibility and affordability task force. These task forces recognize that UISG doesn't have all the answers. There are only 70-some of us, and there are 24,000 of you. And so UISG needs to reach out in those areas that we are not experts in and make sure that student feedback is brought to the table. Because again, collaboration is key, relationship building is the name of the game.
Sure.
So surveys and different committees help get a lot of insight knowledge, but where I've gotten the most critical feedback is when I've been at events next to the communities that we're serving. Oftentimes I'll ask a student organization, what can UISG do for you to help you? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't thought about that. But when I'm just chatting with them, asking about how their organization's going, they'll usually reveal 2 to 3 different barriers that they have with being successful, and I'm able to use my UISG knowledge to be able to understand how to turn those into initiatives to help them.
Okay, thank you. Our last question for this topic is, as you know, there's currently a substantial amount of turnover at the University of Iowa. Within the provost level, the College of Arts and Sciences Dean is undergoing a search. How do you intend to make change with multiple high-level searches in progress and the prospect for a new vision occurring when these positions are filled? We'll start with Bridgeen.
When these new positions are filled, I know not everybody, like I said earlier, doesn't really hear about it. It's kind of something that gets brushed aside. Not every student genuinely wants to reach out and hear from those new positions. And so what I think we should do is we should bring all those new professors, new provosts, any of those things, to classes, to residence halls, to any events, for students to be able to ask them questions, for students to be able to get to know them better, because it's really important that students know who's running their university, who's leading them in this great adventure they call college. And so in order for them to be able to establish those amazing relationships, this will last beyond their positions, beyond their college career, and hopefully be able to continue in some networking in the future.
My vice presidential candidate, actually, Nate Robinson, he sat on the search committee that brought the wonderful Dr. Shivers to campus. This is why it's so important that good leadership is put into the University of Iowa student government, because the decision to bring Dr. Shivers here that's not a one-year thing. That's going to continue on for the next 10, 15 years that she may be here. And the brilliant thing about that is that oftentimes student government are the first students that they meet. So there's the first impression of passion, dedication, and brilliance that needs to be there. So that way you can inform them on what it means to be a Hawkeye, what it means to work with the University of Iowa students, and ultimately where we want to go moving forward. How can we inform that decision-making process? And that is crucial.
And I agree that we should involve student voices when selecting the people that are serving in these positions. And once we do solidify who we want in these positions, it's about holding their hand and bringing them with us on the journey that we have at the University of Iowa. So telling them about the culture. What does it mean to be a Hawkeye here? Dr. Shivers learned that quickly, but it was because she made a Twitter and we were all responding to her on it. It's because she was at our events looking at how we could make sure that we were on the same page with them as they were bringing their new insights and perspectives to the issues that we prioritized for students, and shared with them the concerns that we have so that we can work together and gain their perspective and give them our insight as well to make sure that we're moving forward with concrete action steps that students can benefit from.
I think everyone here have covered everything. I think, I agree that, those individuals that are hired for this position to be more vocal, so students know who their representatives are on campus.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to rebuttal?
No.
Benjamin? Okay, let's move on. So our next topic is about things at the university, academics, engagement of students. So we'll start with one that's of course near and dear to my own heart since I'm an instructor. What policies would you advocate to improve student academic success at the University of Iowa? We'll start our reverse order.
So the University of Iowa is a predominantly white institution. And if you're not quite sure what that means, it means it's a predominantly white institution. And students of color, they oftentimes feel neglected by their instructors who don't necessarily understand what it means. And so that is why Empower Iowa is going to be looking to implement supplemental instructors into the cultural centers, so that way students can feel comfortable learning in environments that often they call home away from home. It is necessary that we continue to improve the cultural centers, because oftentimes they're neglected, and it's even the small things, like making sure that there are capital improvements over there. We need to continue pushing these conversations beyond the cultural centers as well, so that campus can be as accepting and inclusive as possible.
The University of Iowa is revisiting its academic goals for 2020, and students, I know there's one student for sure included on that, but I think we can get a lot more involvement there. So including student voices in class structures, and then focusing on what we should be prioritizing in terms of class requirements to make sure that we are competitive candidates after we're graduating. I also think cultural competency training for faculty is key. If students don't feel safe and welcome by the professors in a classroom, their academic success is not going to be at the level of their peers. I also think we should have a voice for students in architectural design for academic buildings. The engineering building was toured by several students. One of my ticket members, YG, helped host that when we recognized the lack of study spaces for engineering students, and that could have been altered had student voice been included in the architectural design. So advocating for us on a variety of different levels to ensure that academic success is key.
One of the things the Student Collective Party and I would like to advocate for is for more money to be allocated into the Target Opportunity Initiative. We believe that this will improve diversity here on campus within our faculty and staff. We believe it will also increase minority engagement on campus and also establish a well-rounded community here on campus.
One of the things on Envision Iowa we want to see done is that this brand new business library that's beautiful, it's amazing. If you haven't been there, check it out. I'm there all the time. It is so beautiful and great, but the sad thing is that after a certain period of time, it locks. If you're not a business student, you're not allowed in there. I know for me personally, it's kind of hard to stay at the library sometimes, because sometimes they get kind of rowdy. You kind of see everybody you know on campus for some reason at the exact same time. And so it's nice to get somewhere where you don't necessarily see that, where they have so many study spaces there that aren't being used as often as they should because it's allocated specifically to those students. And I think that unlocking that and allowing every student to have that access would be an amazing opportunity. Also, one of our initiatives is a mental health liaison. Basically, you know how we get your email saying, hey, don't forget to register with your academic advisors that have classes. Well, we want to send out an email saying, hey, don't forget to check your mental health. Finals week is super stressful. Midterms are super stressful, everything is, and so we want to make sure that you are aware of that and are reminded your mental health comes first.
Thanks. Ben, would you like to rebuttal? Sure. Got it? Okay. We'll move to our next question. So our next question is about student turnout. The 2018 congressional midterm elections were in November. Historically, turnout for people in the 18 to 29 age demographic, so the students at the University of Iowa predominantly, is around 20% for midterm elections. What would you and your administration do to promote greater turnout among students at the University of Iowa?
Voter engagement is key, and I think especially for our generation, that is a dialogue that has opened wide open in the past few months. As you can see at the rally for the March for Our Lives this past day, we had such a great turnout from students. And so reminding students about the different things that impact them based on voters. In this year, millennials have surpassed the baby boomer generation as the largest voting bloc of Americans, and so highlighting that we are the creators of the change that we want to see, and making it very easy for them to vote, whether that's a button on MyUI, whether that's outreach in residence halls, with flyers or whatever it may be, having a laptop up, making it very crystal clear about how it is that they can vote, and then going with them, having their RAs come and engage them in that process. I know my residents followed me to the polls this year, and if other RAs got them to do that, I'm sure we could have a massive turnout from residence halls again this year.
The Student Collective Party and I believe that the best way to get more students to be more involved is to create an environment that's more inclusive, to make them feel appreciated. So we plan to be more vocal in our classrooms, we plan to be more vocal in our community, speaking to students about issues that are probably to, for instance, we plan to have a bi-weekly town hall meetings to encourage people to come in and talk to us about their issues and thoughts and concerns.
As Hira said, voting is so incredibly important. If you want to see a change done, you got to go out and vote, or else you're not going to get your voice out there and heard. And so, voter turnout is humongous among Americans, and we need to do it. And our goal is to get the biggest amount we've ever had in the November 2018 election cycle. We want a great turnout, kind of like my mental health idea to send out the emails. We can send out an email with a quick link to take you to register to show you how. Also with like office hours for the exec board. If you need help, if you don't know how, but you really want to, we'd be more than happy to walk through it with you and get you all set up so that you know how, so it makes it a little easier for you. One of our initiatives is a government relations representative. Basically with that, we want to have one student on student government, or a couple, or a committee even, to be able to work with the government hands-on, to work with state legislators, to work with our county, to work with our city, everything, just so that we get the information we need and we're able to relay it to you, the students, so that you're aware of what's happening in the world.
I'm so proud to give a shout out to my friends like Mitchell Dunn and Jennifer Corney. In 2016, they helped register over 4,000 first-time voters for that election, which is absolutely massive. And should we get elected into office, we would continue those efforts even going into the midterm years. But in terms of voter efficacy, because all too often students feel that their voices aren't heard, it's important that we put faces to the people that are making these often big and abstract decisions. So that's why we need to make sure that we're continuing our efforts to bring legislators to campus, so not only can students have face-to-face conversations with them, but those legislators can then have conversations with students, and they can continue to see the impact that their legislation has on campus. This has repercussions in terms of the state appropriations too. When they vote on budgets, if they're wanting to give the University of Iowa more money or less money, they'll see that impact.
Thanks. Here, would you like to rebut?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So actually, Bridgeen, we have a governmental relations committee in UISG already. However, we definitely can be improving their efforts by collaborating more with Hawkeye Caucus. So while University of Iowa has a component of our mission to advocate on a governmental level, we have Hawkeye Caucus, which is dedicated year-round to that advocacy, and so they're the experts on campus for what we could be doing. And we have Avery Brennan on our team, who is part of Hawkeye Caucus, and so we should be following their lead on how to register voters, how to make it easier for students to contact their representatives.
Dady, would you like to rebut?
And thank you for clearing that up with me. I actually was aware, I just misplaced my words, and so yes, there is one, and I think that's amazing that we already have that, but on the other hand, not very many students have heard of it again. It's not a very big thing, it's not something that we can all get involved with, each and every one of us, and so being able to open that up to any students, not just students in student government already, making that application more known to everybody so that they all know that they can have a voice as well.
And if we want to continue these conversations with legislators to get students to turn out more to vote, this is why these relationships are so important. These relationships take time. On day one, Empower Iowa already has these relationships built, not only with legislators across the state, but our peer institutions that are oftentimes advocating for the same things.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is related to more upcoming election in a few days. So, more locally, one of the highest turnout rates in UISG elections was the competitive 2015 election, which some of you were probably here for. That was a 30% turnout rate, which means 70% of students who could have voted did not vote in that election. So let's say we assume that we get 30% turnout, and you win 60% of the vote. That means 18% of the student body voted for your platform. Do you think that raises any questions about the overall student support for your initiatives, and how can UISG promote greater student turnout in UISG elections? So we'll start with that.
I believe that UISG can promote greater student turnout by, again, being more vocal with the student body, by encouraging members in UISG to give students updates in their classrooms, creating a bi-weekly town hall meeting to continue the conversation. All those things allow to create that inclusive environment that makes people feel appreciated, feel wanted, and that's what we plan to do my team.
And yes, and as Dady said, reaching out is basically the biggest and most important thing you can do, is making the students know that voting is very important regardless of what aspect it may be, and the reason you're all here today is because you want to be more informed, to make an informed vote, informed decision. And so there's an amazing turnout here today, so obviously these tickets must be doing something right, because everyone's hearing about them, everyone's seeing us on campus, and so that's an amazing start to this. As I said earlier as well, we want to be more transparent. We really want to allow students to be able to come to our meetings, come to our what are supposed to be just for student government, allow them to come and speak and tell us what they want heard. Also encouraging those new voices, those silenced voices that feel as though they're not heard. Again, allowing them to feel as though we want you to talk to us. We want you to tell us what you want, and we want you there to be with us.
I think this question does raise an interesting concern as to whether or not a successful student government campaign is a democratic mandate to govern. We need to continue to push the importance of what this organization does, and in the meantime, should my administration become elected, we will make sure that we are continually reaching out to the students by live streaming our Senate meetings, and also by having semesterly feedback surveys so that we can continue to make sure that your voice are being heard and that we can continue to earn that democratic mandate.
Oh, sorry. I think UISG has again and again told people why we're important, what we're in charge of. But our focus should be shifting to including voices that don't feel like they have any need to be involved in the organization. So I built my ticket with 2/3 of community members that have never been involved with UISG before. And what I've seen from that is a heavy involvement from people like that are involved with the Sudanese community, or maybe the Malaysian students, or international students. We had an international student comment on one of our posts yesterday saying, "Man, I don't even think I can vote, but I would support you." And so it broke my heart to see that some international students on our campus don't even know that they can vote. And so how are we communicating, why they should be caring about their organization? And that starts with including their voices as representatives on our team so that they can adequately put on our platform the things that students should be invested in. So the platform should give them reason enough to be involved, and we shouldn't keep spreading our reasoning ourselves for why we're important.
Dady, would you like to rebut? No? Okay, then let's move on. All right, our last question for this topic is on diversity, which some of you have talked about already. So one of President Harold's goals is to promote greater diversity on the campus. Diversity can come in many forms. It can come in the form of underrepresented minority groups, foreign students, and non-traditional students. Maybe if you could discuss one or two policies that you and your administration would pursue to further the goal of promoting diversity on campus. We'll start with Bridgeen.
Diversity is huge on campus. Intersectionality really is important. We need to be aware, we need to include that around our differences on campus. And so by doing so, we will make sure every single student is heard on campus. With that being said, on our ticket as well, we have students from all sorts of backgrounds. We have LGBTQ representatives, we have ROTC representatives, we have different races and ethnicities, we have all of it. And by doing that, by me talking one-on-one with every single one of them, I have heard what their concerns are. I have heard what their student organizations want, what their groups want. And by doing that, it's really important because then they feel as though, like Hira said, the ones that didn't know they could even vote, now they know that they are involved, and we do want to hear from them. As far as policies go, we really do want to create that open line of communication for students to be aware of what's going on in our country with the laws, with everything changing. We want them to feel safe, and we want them to know that we care, and we want them to know as well.
Inclusivity, it's so important, and there's not enough time in a minute to talk about everything that we have on our platform to ensure that's true. But one thing that I don't hear talked often enough about is students who have disabilities, and I'm so proud of our platform that discusses students with disabilities and how we are going to help them and how we're going to empower them. One of those ways is by partnering with student disability services to make sure that if students need accommodations in class and they don't feel comfortable talking to their professor, if they so choose, they can have an advocate with them in the room with their professor to make sure that they get the accommodations that they deserve. It's also important, just out of pure symbolism, that we move the SDS office out of the basement of Burge, which is very difficult to access with wheelchairs. So fundamentally, we will be addressing all sorts of different issues on campus, but students with disabilities are often neglected, disabilities that are both visible and invisible.
This conversation about how we get diversity on our campus is better started about how we respond to the diversity that we have on our campus already. So how are we supporting the students that represent those diverse thoughts of opinion, ethnicities, identities on our campus? And it starts with making sure that we're upholding the resources that are keeping safe the most vulnerable groups on campus. So for example, our VAP got over $400,000 of their funding cut, and it knocked out transitive healing, which was a focused resource for LGBTQ+ students. And those are one of the most vulnerable students on campus in regards to sexual violence. And so that should have been a priority to keep in a resource if we want to encourage more LGBTQ+ identified students to our campus. I also think that we should not rework the wheel and apply programs that have been effective at encouraging these minority groups. Like Iowa Edge has been very successful in upholding the needs of Iowa first-generation students, but how are we applying that to Black students, to Pakistani students, Indian students, etc.?
As a Black student here on campus, as a Muslim student here on campus, I've noticed that there is a definite stigma in the Muslim religion. There's a media portrayal that terrorism has led others to believe that Muslim is a dangerous belief. Myself and many members of my group have spoken to many Muslims group here on campus, and we would like to work together to improve, to bring about awareness by creating additional constituency seats in UISG to bring about more awareness and more understanding about the Muslim minority groups here on campus.
Thank you. Would you like to rebuttal? Sure.
Ben, I just want to say I love your idea there with the students with disabilities. My 18-year-old brother does have autism, and hearing that you guys want to accommodate for students like him is amazing. He told me just yesterday, actually, he can't wait to come to the University of Iowa and be with his big sister one day, and that means so much to me. And one of my ideas that I actually want to implement is when he goes to games, the loud noises bug him. It's a very common thing with children with autism, so I think that's something cool to be able to rent out a press box for students with physical and mental disabilities so that they can be able to enjoy the game, yet not have all those stimulants.
Okay. So let's move on to our next topic. Our next topic is contentious issues that we face at the university. So we'll start with this one. So the first question is, data from Student Health and Wellness paints a sort of glass half full, glass half empty about the picture of student health. This question will focus on alcohol use. 51% of UI students report high risk of drinking in the last 2 weeks, which is defined as 5 or more drinks in one instance. But the glass half full is that this is at its lowest point in 25 years of data reported from the University of Iowa. 57% of students reported one incidence of a negative consequence because of drinking. This number is down from 2012. So while the numbers seem high, they are improvements over our past. Do you think, given this sort of glass half full, glass half empty, that UISG should focus on addressing the issue of excessive and harmful alcohol consumption? And if so, what would you and your administration do? We'll start with them.
In my time in the University of Iowa student government, I've had the privilege to serve on the Partnership for Alcohol Safety, which is a collection of a variety of different community partners that include the mayor, it includes Dr. Melissa Shivers, and to name, the list could go on. It's been a privilege to serve on that committee so that we can continue to make sure that all university students are safe and that they are able to get out of their university experience alive and well. I've also been able to advocate with UNI and Iowa State to pass medical amnesty legislation, which would allow underage students in the need in an alcohol-related emergency to call 911 without necessarily getting a ticket. Because fundamentally, I would rather have students call 911 and be safe than get one simple misdemeanor. The disconnect is there, and we've had so much success. I'm actually so proud to say that It was passed through the House Committee last Wednesday unanimously, and so we're just looking to get it through the House now before it goes to the governor's desk. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. As an RA, I've seen many students utilize this for calling for help in avoiding the policy violations in the rest halls. I think building a strong relationship with students, especially as an RA, to make sure that they feel comfortable calling for help when that is necessary. Oftentimes, that training isn't there to students to know when someone has had too much, and that's where we run into concerns and people, don't make it to the hospital. And so, providing a peer advocacy and peer training program so that even our students who don't have their RAs watching over them off campus, which is a huge, 70 plus of our population lives off campus, making sure that they have people in their buildings, their neighbors, their roommates that are also trained to spot these concerns and work through that education to make sure that those students know, what unhealthy and high-risk alcohol behavior is, what the concerns are, and then should those students need help, to be able to connect them to the resources and call for help if needed.
So everything you guys just said, I believe the best way to go about it is continually having an open dialogue here at the University of Iowa. High alcohol consumption here is a huge problem here for many students here at the University of Iowa, and having an open dialogue to encourage students to come talk to us, and so that if there are problems out there, we can direct them to the right places.
Yeah, so as going off of what everybody said already, drinking is a huge issue on campus, and as the numbers might be decreasing, it still isn't to the level we would want. And one of our main initiatives actually to go off of is the Greek Life Moratorium. In no way, shape, or form are we condoning anything that's happened. Everything that's happened in the past is heartbreaking, and we don't want to see any of that happen again on campus. So our goal is to really work with the FSL task force and the police and everything to ensure that something like this never happens again, but also to reach out to the Greek Lives individually to hear what they want seen done, because this impacted them as well. And instead of reaching out and trying to shut them down, we want to lift them up and tell them, you got this, we will come back from this better than ever, and to stick to their roots that they were founded on, when their founders founded them originally. And by doing so, we hope to promote that so other students on campus as well will see that this isn't a big issue either.
So I wanted to touch on the moratorium just a little bit. There were a lot of positives that came about from the moratorium. It opened up such an important discussion about alcohol safety on campus. I also saw some of the negatives as an RA. So it was a ban on alcohol for FSL events, and so what I saw my residents doing was going further and further off campus to house parties where there weren't designated drivers, where there weren't people that they felt comfortable calling if they felt unsafe. And so I want to make sure that when we are doing policies that we're addressing those concerns as well and keeping that in mind.
I would like to add this. I would like to add that those policies that are put in place to prevent the issue that happened before to never happen again. I would like to add on that to some students it's problematic because it's allowing them to drink on the table, and those things are not being monitored. So I would like to basically say we should continue having open dialogues to encourage people to come and talk to us about those issues.
Okay. All right, let's move on. All right, our next question is something that many of you probably observe happening across the nation. So across the country, higher education institutions are struggling to navigate their commitments to free speech as well as an inclusive campus culture. How should UISG navigate this dynamic? What actions should UISG take to uphold free speech as well as inclusion? We'll start with you.
This is a relevant question to my experience here at the University of Iowa. My freshman year, I was in my cultural clothing coming from a Black Sunday Student Association event, and a student on campus approached me and called me a terrorist and said that I was going to blow up the people next to me. And this was a very damaging experience in my first year at Iowa. And when I asked administration to step in. I understood that he had the free speech to be able to say those things. And so I think where the dialogue needs to start is an education about some of the ignorance that is around the things that people say when they utilize free speech to say hurtful things to especially people of color on campus. And what I wanted to chat with the gentleman that said that to me was not any policy violations, but rather a conversation and building a relationship so that he knew that another Muslim student on campus was in fact the opposite of what he had been seeing in the media or maybe what he had heard from his friends, proving those things wrong. And so using things like social campaigns can help educate those people with that.
Oh, it's how should UISG navigate the sort of tricky balance between free speech and promoting an inclusive campus culture?
I believe that all students have the right to basically say what they want to say, but the university have a policies to make sure that no students is feeling like they are being targeted. So any students that basically is trying to threaten the livelihood of any other students should not be allowed on this campus. So
free speech is something that's very important to me. I believe that, again, every opinion matters, every opinion is valid. With that being said, free speech should not be hurtful speech. Free speech should not be what Hira experienced. I'm terribly sorry you experienced that as well. That's not something that should be tolerated on this campus whatsoever. One of the things I think needs to be implemented is more of a support system for those students who feel as though they are being targeted on campus, who feel as though their voice is silenced due to these stigmas that have been opposed to them for whatever reason, which regardless of whether they feel like they're the only ones or they feel as though it's a big group of students, those students need to feel accounted for and felt appreciated because every student is appreciated here at Iowa. In order to promote that more, I think we should implement more educationals on campus so students know basically what the definition of ignorance is, because that's something that not a lot of students are aware of, and by doing so and by showcasing these different cultural aspects, we'll learn so much from them.
Free speech obviously is a nationwide issue, and no university and no student government has truly come up with an adequate solution. So this is one of those instances where a body like UISG needs to make sure that their mouths are shut and their ears are open, listening to everybody who feels that they could be affected by this. But I think one thing that can help is if we have an established protocol in the event that a potentially controversial speaker comes to campus. I think this protocol would, one, ensure that the speaker's space is safe and inclusive for any of those who may want to hear, that there's an adequate protesting space for those with diverging points of view that is equally safe adjacent to where the speaker is located, and also that there is counselors available for students that may feel affected. Because ultimately we need to push our values of inclusion, and we need to make sure that while we are promoting free speech, as Bridgeen said, we're not promoting hurtful speech, and that inclusivity is a fundamental value here at the University of Iowa.
Would you like to rebut? Dady, would you like to rebut? You? Ben? Okay. All right, well then let's move on. All right, our next one is related to the March for Our Lives, as we discussed was this weekend. The university has also experienced its own tragic instance of gun violence. Should UISG be involved in addressing the issue of potential for gun violence on campus? And if so, how will you address this issue at Iowa? We'll start with that.
Yes, UISG should be addressing this issue because it's an issue that UISG should be addressing this issue because it's an issue that's problematic to many people here on campus. The Student Collective Party and I believe that to address this issue, we need to have an open dialogue. Having more students to be involved in those conversations, so we can find innovative ways to solve those problems that we are having here on campus.
Gun violence is such a serious issue on this campus. Obviously, none of us want to see a life taken in any way, shape, or form, and that's why we need to fix this issue. We need to make it so it doesn't ever happen again. But the realistic part of it is that it's going to happen again, and that's awful to think about. But we can take measures to prevent these actions and to help students be prepared if ever put in this situation. One of the things I think needs more implemented is more security on campus. I think the dorm security is doing amazing. I think when at the library and a police officer walks by at the late hours, I do feel safe. But at the same time, when I do walk home at night, I don't necessarily feel as safe. You never really know what's happening. I do live off campus, and so you never really know what to be prepared for. On top of that, I think it's important that we team up with the Iowa City Police Department and the University Police Department to implement self-defense classes to provide students the opportunity to understand what to do in this situation, because I personally know if I was in this situation, I don't know what I would do.
Under an Empower Iowa administration, we would make sure that the active shooter protocols that the University of Iowa has is always perpetually under review to make sure that it is as up-to-date as possible. We need to make sure that we're getting as much feedback from other universities to see what they're doing, because again, we don't want to be reinventing the wheel twice. We also need to make sure that when incidents like this do happen, that the hawk alert system that we have is working as it should. It seems all too often that an emergency happens and then maybe we get a hawk alert a half an hour later. That can't happen, especially in an emergency like a shooting, where oftentimes seconds is life or death. We also need to make sure that with this hawk alert system that there are adequate follow-ups that come about so that all students are put at ease in any event, whether or not the hawk alert was real or maybe it was a false alarm. It's important that students have closure, that they feel safe on campus, and I do think that's a fundamental role of student government.
Unfortunately, active shooter scenarios are something that schools across the nation are dealing with and figuring out how to respond to. There was a situation in Courier a few weeks ago where we thought we might have an active shooter, and three things ran through my head at that time. One was the hawk alert system. It takes up to 15 minutes for all students to be notified of a concern on campus, and that's why I think Brave Guardian should be required on everyone's phones to make sure that you are getting those alerts on time so that you can act accordingly. I thought about the active shooter protocol that we have. We have a violent incident survival training sponsored by DPS that I have been through, and I think that is absolutely vital information. It is life or death there, and it is such an important training that can be showed in a video that we can market with Search Party. And then the third is mental health. How are we looking out for the students that we are concerned about? We have 2 members from Active Minds on our team, and we want to make sure that we're prioritizing, looking at the red flags, identifying them, and then saying something when you see something, both fellow students and professors as well.
Now you go for rebuttal. Okay. Our next question, just before we start, there's a trigger warning for this next question. This question is on the topic of sexual assault, so just to be aware that this next question is on a very sensitive issue. So the question is, in a 2015 survey about sexual assault on the University of Iowa campus, 21% of UI female students reported having been raped, another 20% reported experiencing an attempted rape. What would you and your administration do to try and address the issue of sexual misconduct on campus? We'll start with Bridgeen.
Sexual misconduct, especially for me as a woman, is a terrifying thing. Like I said, when I walk home at night, I always FaceTime my mom or my dad to make sure that at least I have one witness if something were to happen. And I think that needs to be something that's more known on campus, is that this is a serious issue. And with Envision Iowa, we plan to team up with our RAP to make sure that these serious situations are put to a stop. Another thing that we want to implement is more blue light security systems throughout campus. I would like to see those more outside the dorms, apartments off campus, fraternity, sorority housing, everywhere on campus, so that if you're at any point on your walk home, on your walk to class, on your night out downtown, that you feel safe, that you know that one of those blue light security systems is right there waiting for you, and if anything were to happen by the most disappointing opportunity, that you would have that there for you to contact the police as soon as possible, and someone will be notified.
This is obviously a far-reaching issue that needs consistent and persistent and experienced leadership to address. Consent and incapacitation training at Success in Iowa needs to be expanded and improved, because as we grow up, our culture hasn't adjusted yet to truly understand what consent is, and we need to help fix that issue. We also need to make sure that we're giving more funding to RVAP, RAC, and other victim services, because not only do they do incredible advocacy work, they do really good work in terms of education to make sure these situations never happen. But fundamentally, the question results in we need to change the culture, and that's where Empower Iowa will leverage the relationships that we have with legislators and the partnerships that we have with universities across the state to implement a K-12 consent education plan, so that way we can make sure that the culture, when students grow up, they come to Iowa knowing what consent is, because fundamentally, consent is a human right, and no student should live in fear.
I have worked on this issue since my sophomore year of high school, and I have, there's still so much more to do. I think that you can tackle this problem in 3 different ways: research, prevention, and response. And so research, I oversaw the Speak Out survey for 2017, and we exponentially grew our numbers in terms of our response rate, and that is key for knowing where to apply our funding for resources. Prevention, unfortunately, consent education doesn't have as much backing for research for effectiveness, but we have programs for female identifying students currently that we're working to expand further identities that are showing progress in combating this issue and decreasing those rates. And then resources, we need to make sure that our responses are the best that they can be as an RA, as a professor, as a student, and so advocating for continuing the peer advocacy program to make sure students know how to respond to disclosures, working with the Anti-Violence Coalition plan to make sure that the 2-year plan that rolls out every year is followed through as well is very key.
I believe the best way to go about tackling this issue is to get more people involved, like student orbs. There are over 390 plus students here on campus. Student collective party, and I believe that to continue this conversation is to get those organizations to get more involved in creating initiatives that are targeting those problems. So only UISG working to solve these problems.
Okay, then let's move on. So the last topic of the night is on affordability, something on the minds of most students at the University of Iowa. In all of your campaign platforms, and I did read all of your platforms, affordability is on every one of your platforms. One way to promote affordability is to increase the percentage of university revenue that comes from state appropriations, since tuition is not the majority of the revenue as it currently is today. Imagine you have 1 minute, just like you have 1 minute now, of the governor's time. Make your best case to the governor for why there should be a significant increase in state appropriations to the University of Iowa. We'll start.
The University of Iowa is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa State is the Hawkeye State. I can't quite get why there's this continuous push of lack of appropriations at the state level. The University of Iowa is one of the largest economic drivers in the state, and it impacts more than just in Iowa. Our alumni go nationwide, and they produce some of the greatest photographs, they produce some of the greatest inventions that this country has ever seen. All I can say is that not only is state funding important, but so is looking at other policies that the governor can control that advocate for lower tuition, that advocate for lower housing costs, that advocate for lower textbook prices.
Every dollar that you put into students' education is coming directly back into our economy, into our state. When you take away money from education for students here at Iowa, you're not just increasing their loans, but you're decreasing their ability to satisfy their basic needs. Every dollar that you take away means a student has to make another critical decision about how they're going to pay rent or how they're going to buy food. I have had my residents bike in the snow to Jimmy John's overnight to pay for their tuition and work several other jobs, and their academics have gone down because of it. I urge you to continue funding the University of Iowa exactly for the reason I mentioned at the beginning, because every dollar that you're putting into us is coming right back into you and at an exponential rate.
This is a big issue here on campus. Many students are not able to fully take advantage of the resources that are given to them because they are always worried about tuition increase. I have many friends here on campus that are thinking about thinking about quitting school because they cannot afford the expenses anymore. And to me, it's important for the university it's important for the state to continue funding, to continue providing the university with the appropriate amount of money to be able to fund those different students, organizations, different initiatives are out there for many students.
So I actually had the opportunity for the past few years to network with our past governor, our current governor, and other past governors from previous years. And every time I've had the opportunity to reach out to them, this is something that I have brought up even before I was in college, because I knew I'd be paying for my own college, and seeing that the money that I have to rile up somehow, I kind of want. More money for the University of Iowa means more money for the students, means more money to help them with their brighter future that they want to withstand. So, like I said, every time I reach out to them, and I want to be able to bring them to the campus so that everybody else can reach out to them and tell them their concerns and tell them their stories, so that to really tug at the heartstrings and make them understand that taking money away from universities is not helping the students, whether they may think so or not. These students need all the help they can get to make sure that their academics don't drop and to make sure that they have the support they need.
Yes.
One of the points I wanted to emphasize is that legislators are often tired of hearing the statistics and the numbers, and those individualized stories that students experience are key. So people who are maybe their parents' last hope to break them out of the cycle of poverty, or maybe the student who has the curative cancer down the road that won't be able to get a higher education without the funding from the state. And so sharing those key experiences and then bringing those students with us to the Capitol is very important.
Okay. Well, our next question is something actually Hira began to answer already. So, beyond your 1-minute pitch to the governor, how would you and your administration engage the state legislature more broadly, generate support amongst the legislators or amongst the state for an increase in state appropriation? So, how would you strategize to sort of accomplish what you would like to achieve? Start with Hira.
So I want to remind students that it is not our job to cater to our representatives, but it is our representatives' job to cater to us. And so, like I mentioned before, we are going to be the largest voting bloc. And so the more student voices that we have at the Capitol, the more stories that we can carry on our backs with us when we go as UISG, the more effective we're going to be in that advocacy. And then bringing Board of Regents to the university. Students have no idea what Board of Regents is, and it took me a long time even within UISG to get an understanding of that. And so when they're here eating lunch with us, living our lives with us, it's very difficult to make policy changes when you can humanize the people that are being impacted by those changes. And so bringing those stories and bringing them here, building those relationships with them while we're here on campus is going to be so key for both the students being invested in the mission and recognizing how important their voices are, and also for representatives to understand the value of those students.
Yes, I totally believe that in order for us to tackle this issue, we need to bring more students into the conversation, because right now there's no support to this argument, because many students do not know about the conversations that are taking place. So to get more students involved, to get more students to take the steps to be able to fight their own battle as well. But we need to create that environment that's appreciative, that they can bring their thoughts to us and things like that.
Yeah, I just want to say here, I love that point you made, that the representatives are here for you. They should be reaching out to you to hear what you want. And sadly, sometimes it isn't always the case. Sometimes they kind of want to work on what they want to work on instead of reaching out to us. And so it is very important that you do go to the Capitol, you do tell them what you want, and you do tell them your stories. Because by telling them their stories and telling them that, maybe your life hasn't been the easiest, but you do want to make that change, you do want to make a life for yourself, that's really what's going to show them that that's the American dream that they have so said recently in the past. I would like to continue my relationships with the governor and with different state legislators that I already have to be able to bring them to campus more often, to be able to bring them to student organizations for them to tell them the things that they see that needs fixed on campus, to actually take them to see what needs fixed on campus so they can experience it as well, so they can see that, yeah, it takes a while for Night Ride to come get you at night, and maybe they should provide funding to help us with that, or to show the students that really need that tuition help that they can actually get that.
A part of this question can be answered by ensuring that students are politically active. Legislators, they should be listening to us, but they also fundamentally need an incentive to listen to us. And if we don't vote, then what purpose do they have? So that's where the University of Iowa student government will promote political activism of all forms here in Iowa City. We will also leverage our current relationship with legislators from all 99 counties in Iowa to come to campus, see the impacts, talk to students from their counties, so that way we can humanize what it means to be a student, and no longer when they are casting their vote on an appropriation budget, are they considering Iowa City kind of be this abstract land far away from Des Moines that they really don't care about. We need them to understand the impacts of their decisions, and the only way to do that is to bring them face to face so we can have conversations.
Okay. Who would like to vote? Dady? You? Okay. Then let's move on to our next question. I just realized my next question has a typo in it, so I'll have to apologize for that. As you have discussed, many UI students live off campus. What do you think is the primary issue for these students? Whether it's affordable rents, landlord concerns, or whatever issue you want to discuss, what could you and your administration realistically do to help students address whatever issue you think is the most pressing for those who live off campus? We'll start with that.
I believe that the most pressing issue for students that live off campus is food insecurity. What we plan to do here on campus is to create an housing system that will allow those students to come in the cafeteria and take out food and take it home and be able to eat it on their own time. I've spoken to many students here that they can't afford to go to they can't afford to go eat at the cafeteria because to go eat at the dining hall because it's too expensive. So we plan to basically have that initiative in place that at the end of the day we open the dining halls for 2 additional hours so students can come in, especially those that live off campus, come in, take in free food, and take it out.
Bridgeen next.
Off-campus affordability is huge, off-campus housing affordability, sorry. And I know that the current student government is working a lot towards this, and I think they're doing a great job. We're definitely taking a step in the right direction, but the problem is that it's still not where it needs to be. Kind of going back to the last question a little bit, by lowering the tuition, by getting the state help, by getting that money to help the students will be able to take that money that they're saving and put it towards their housing. Also, something I want to implement is more bus routes further out from campus. I personally take a city bus every single day. I live off Burlington. It's quite the haul up that hill that I don't want to do 4 times a day. And so I do definitely take advantage of that bus, and I encourage you all to do so as well. And I think the University of Iowa student government needs to work closely with the city to make sure that there are further bus routes so that those housing options that are further off campus that might be more affordable for students are more accessible.
For the past 2 years in my role as city liaison, one of the primary issues that we've been tackling at the city council level is housing. In the past year alone, 4,000 units have gone online, and there was an article in the Daily Iowa a couple days ago that shows housing and dining is lowering their rents for single user rooms. This is precisely what we would expect when we advocate for higher density housing, increasing the amount of units that students are able to afford, and increasing the amount of units that students are able to access. But it's also important that landlords, predatory landlords especially, do not get away with their actions. It's unfortunate that lease signing season happens in October. And for first-year students, a lot of times they don't really know the lay of the land. So that's why UISG will be pushing out its first landlord review survey in a couple of weeks, where each and every one of you can give your feedback on what your landlord has done. This feedback will then be put into a survey, and it'll be institutionalized and published for everybody to see come fall.
Well, we've made a lot of progress with UISG downtown, but we have not adequately combated renting caps. So renting caps are putting limits on houses and areas downtown to limit the number of renting properties that you can have, which puts a limit on the number of areas students can rent out. We also want to create with Surge a student tenants association. So this is so your landlords can't take advantage of you, and especially a population that is being damaged by this is international students. Landlords have a history and reputation of taking advantage of our international student population, and I think that's absolutely unacceptable. And so getting those students together and making sure that we are able to advocate for them adequately is important. And I think also just an expansion of our resources downtown. It can be easy to be disconnected from campus when you don't have an RA doling out information to you. So putting things like the bathroom stall posters that I implemented in the IMU in those spaces as well is necessary.
I just want to say, Ben, that survey idea is actually amazing. I'm actually really excited to see that put out, and I think it's really important. It's almost like voting. You have to get your voice out there if you want it to be heard, and that's like the same in this situation. I have heard horror stories of these landlords at times, the things that they do, and I think it's really important that we work with the student legal services on campus, that students know how to go about their rights, and so that they know what their rights are when dealing with these landlords, so they know how to combat these situations when they arise.
When the city started passing the rental caps, it was really important that we had a seat at the table, and we did. The rental caps came about as a result of state legislation that took away some certain actions the city could use. And so those rental caps are actually important to make sure that landlords aren't cramming students into smaller and smaller living spaces so that we can maintain the quality of life of every student no matter what. We shouldn't be allowing them to just take really poor housing and running with it. It's important that not only is housing affordable, but it is quality.
Yeah, I agree that students should be crammed in spaces for sure. But we should also be making sure that we're pushing to increase rental properties further and closer on campus as well, to make sure the buildings aren't, limiting those spaces when they do have opportunities to host students.
Thank you. All right, our last question for the night is, what ideas that you have not already discussed do you have for UISG to help students financially that can be done solely at the university level or within Iowa City? So it's not something that would require state appropriations or state legislation. So we'll start with Bridgeen.
So, like I said before, I do pay for my tuition, I pay for my sorority, I basically fund myself, and that has been something that has been a struggle for me since my first day here at college. I actually ended up reaching out to my academic advisor, to my RA, to see, hey, like, what kind of support systems are there for me to go to? What kind of organizations can I speak to understand how I can get a job, how I can do all of this? And not very many of them have any answers. And so what I want to implement is a more, promoted system for students to be able to contact and say, hey, how do I do this? How do I go about this? Because for most students' lives, they have someone there to help them. They have someone there to tell them like how to allocate their money. And I think that's really important that students know that when you get to college, you're not alone with your money, and you are an adult for almost like the first time in your life. And it's actually terrifying to think about that I'm an adult. But it's real, it's there, and students need to know where their money is going and how to spend it properly.
I think a big theme of the way that Empower Iowa operates is that we recognize that there isn't an issue that is solely isolated to any one area. And that's why we want to make sure that we can get rid of the 20-hour wage cap that students have when they work on-campus jobs. Fundamentally, like, if you need that money, you need to be able to work at a university job so that way you are increasing your rate of academic success. If you can't work those 20 hours, you're going to move off campus and your academic success is going to go down. Now this would change through our relationships that we have with our legislators and our experience advocating for similar concerns with other universities, including Iowa State and UNI.
Things that students balance beyond their tuition are textbooks and food. And so textbook affordability is something that's key to Surge Party's platform, making sure that we are highlighting open access textbook options, so things that would be available for free online to all students, is key, and then the borrowing program, so maybe incentivizing how we're bringing textbooks in that students are done with, and then letting students borrow those so we can be both sustainable with those textbooks and provide that need to students. And then the food pantry is a key resource. However, there's such a huge stigma with reaching out for help in that capacity. We want to make sure that we're reducing that stigma, opening up their shelf spaces. I made a video this past year walking through what it looks like to go to the food pantry from start to finish to get food, because students won't use those resources if they're not sure how they're going to be responded to, and treating students with dignity in those times is going to be key. And then increasing options for meal plans. Meal plans are very expensive, and we have Black and Gold, which are up in the $1,000 range. And so providing more opportunities for smaller meal plans that are more affordable for students will also give them an opportunity to do that.
An initiative that my team and I have been talking about would be another initiative to be more sustainable here on campus would be the Envision, which will basically turn off those vending machines here on campus. Well, turn off the lights, but also keep your beverages cold. We've noticed that those machines take out a lot of power, so we'd like to initiate that in order to save the university money and in turn save student tuition.
Kind of going off of what Ben said, the 20-hour cap is definitely something that I would like to advocate for in a certain way. I am a member of the work study program here at Iowa, and I definitely think that that should be spread out more so more students can get that opportunity to have the work study where the business pays you half and the university pays you half, so that they're open to more jobs. I work at the VA hospital. It's amazing, and they're very understanding of my schoolwork, but sometimes I kind of say, hey, I have a final tomorrow, is it okay if I skip? And there's no one else to cover my shift. So by allowing more students to be able to have those positions, they'll be more understanding of your schoolwork before work.
Okay, well, we have reached the end of my questions. We will let each candidate give a closing statement. The order is the inverse of the introduction, so someone right there. So Dady, you can start.
I believe I should be your next student vice president because of the outside perspective I'm bringing in. My team and I have interviewed over 1,000+ students to create initiatives. We believe that we can be more. We believe that by being more vocal with the students, by allow them by creating an environment that allow them to bring their thoughts and ideas, we can break down those barriers that UISG is a elitist type of organization.
Yeah, I'd just like to close by first thanking Professor Lai for moderating and thanking all the other candidates for coming here today. And I'd also like to thank you, the students, for coming and engaging in these conversations with us. It's only going to drive the university forward. And you and all 24,000 of your undergraduate peers each have unique circumstances and stories. And because of that, your empowerment is going to manifest itself in 24,000 different ways. That sounds like a tall task, but with over 30 years of collective student government experience and involvement in over 60 different unique student organizations, I firmly believe that Empower Iowa has what it takes to make sure that your student experience is as positive as it can be. I just want to let you know that Empower Iowa hears you, and that we will fight alongside you, and that ultimately we hope to empower you.
I want to reiterate the thanks to people who came to this debate, for Professor Lai and Joanna for organizing it. I have been honored to hear the stories of people in our community from my role as Director of Health and Safety, from my role as an RA, and several of the positions I've held. And I've been especially honored to hear the stories since beginning the campaign. If you leave tonight with nothing else, please know that your individual stories deeply matter to me and every single person on my team. Our team has been working both inside and, more importantly, outside of UISG to fight for your needs. We understand what it takes to change policies and uplift the voices of students to ensure that they are heard. We have members from Active Minds and Hawkeye Caucus and many cultural organizations that have already been fighting for your needs on campus, and we have the experience to hit the ground running when we're elected. We invite you to join the surge because we plan to serve you through representation, growth, and empowerment. We have built a team that will listen to your stories and concerns and work for you, alongside you, and ensure that the University of Iowa continues to lead the nation in supporting the university that we all call home.
I again want to extend my thanks to Professor Lai for moderating, for Joanna for all your hard work that you've done putting everything together. My team for the endless amount of support, it's Envision Iowa. I don't know what I would do without any of you humans. You're amazing. And lastly, for all you students who came out today, and for the ones who couldn't be here that have been coming to our events, asking us questions, you all mean the world to us as well. We want to be there for you. We want you guys to know that your voices are heard, and we want you to feel that way as well. Your college experience should be the best 4 years of your life, honestly. That's just the stigma that's attached to it, and everyone expects that. And here at Envision Iowa, we want to make sure that that's the case. We want to work for you, but we also want to work with you. We want to work alongside of you, because you are the reason we are here today. You are the reason that this university is as incredible as it is, and you are the reason that Hawkeyes are so amazing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, this is the end of our debate, so let's give our